For over 200 years, we stared at Easter Island and saw only what we were meant to see. Stone heads, primitive monuments, a cautionary tale about environmental collapse. But in 2008, archaeologists started digging beneath one of those heads, and what emerged rewrote everything. These weren't heads. They were full-bodied giants, some reaching 30 feet tall, buried deliberately, with arms folded across chests, covered in spiral carvings and symbols, surrounded by hidden chambers, chemical workshops, and engineering so precise it survived 1,000 years. Of earthquakes without shifting a single stone. The island isn't a graveyard of a failed civilization. It's a library, encrypted in rock. And the more we decode it, the more disturbing the message becomes. Because whoever built this understood material science, celestial mechanics, and social engineering at a level that doesn't fit the timeline we've been taught. This is the story of what lies beneath Easter Island, and why some people really don't want you digging deeper. Easter Island sits 2,300 miles from the nearest continent, 1,400 miles from the nearest inhabited island. It's one of the most remote pieces of land on Earth. And that's the first engineering problem now wants to talk about. Polynesians reached it somewhere between 300 and 800 AD. Sailing outrigger canoes, no compass, no maps. Just stars, swells, and generational knowledge of ocean patterns. The voyage itself required predictive modeling of currents, seasonal wind shifts, and provisions planning for weeks at open sea. This wasn't accidental discovery. It was calculated exploration. And when they arrived, they found a volcanic rock with thin soil, limited fresh water, and almost no native timber. Survival here required systems thinking from day one. Water catchment, soil enrichment, crop rotation in marginal conditions. The island shouldn't have supported a population large enough to carve hundreds of multi-ton statues, but it did for centuries, which means the baseline assumption that these were primitive people got it backwards. You don't colonize the most hostile environment in the Pacific and then spontaneously develop advanced stoneworking. You arrive with the knowledge already encoded in your culture. Rano Raraku, the volcanic quarry where 90% of the Moai were carved. When you walk through it today, you see something strange. Dozens of unfinished statues, still attached to the bedrock, tools abandoned mid-strike. Like the workers just stopped, put down their obsidian hand axes, and never came back. Conventional history says this happened because of societal collapse, but the archaeology doesn't support sudden abandonment. The tools are organized, the work site is clean. The statues are in different phases of completion, which means multiple teams were working simultaneously on a production schedule. This wasn't chaos, it was a controlled shutdown. And here's the detail that matters. The stone they used is volcanic tough, soft when first exposed to air, hardens over time, which means they had to work fast. Once a block was cut, they understood material properties, curing times, structural load limits. Some of the unfinished Moai are 40 feet long, weighing over 200 tons, and they're carved with such precision that modern laser scans show tolerances within millimeters. For a society supposedly using stone tools and guesswork. That level of dimensional accuracy is anomalous. When excavations finally went below ground level, the Moai revealed their secret. They weren't busts. They were full figures, with torsos extending 20 feet underground, arms positioned deliberately, hands with elongated fingers, resting on abdomens, and on their backs, carvings, spirals, crescents, geometric patterns that match no known Polynesian iconography. Some researchers argue these are clan symbols or genealogical markers, but the patterns are mathematically consistent, repeating ratios, symmetrical arrangements. They look less like decoration and more like notation. What really changes the equation is what surrounded the bases. Sealed chambers, packed with red pigment, not paint. Industrial quantities of hematite and magnetite, iron oxides, processed into powder and stored in stone-lined pits. This wasn't ceremonial, it was manufacturing. The pigment was used to coat the statues, the bodies of the dead, and ceremonial objects. But the scale suggests something more. Chemical preservation, electromagnetic properties, ritual that required specific mineral compounds. And it was, being produced long after the island's forests disappeared, which destroys the narrative that societal collapse followed. Deforestation. They adapted, reorganized, kept producing. Someone was managing resources with long-term planning. Here's where it gets uncomfortable for the standard model. The Moai don't just sit on platforms. They're integrated into structures called ahu, massive stone foundations, some stretching 300 feet long, built with precisely fitted basalt blocks. No mortar, no metal tools, just compression. Joinery that's held together through centuries of seismic activity. When engineers analyze these platforms, they find things that shouldn't be there. Drainage systems, weight distribution, channels, alignments to solar and lunar events with accuracy, requiring astronomical observation over multiple generations. The statues themselves were transported miles from the quarry to coastal sites, and they moved them upright, not dragged, not rolled, walked. Recent experiments proved it's possible. 3 teams pulling ropes can rock a 10-ton replica forward in a walking motion. It works, but it requires synchronized rhythm, specific statue proportions, and teams trained to move as one unit, which means they weren't just moving rocks. They were training crews, developing techniques, iterating on designs until they found the optimal transport method. That's systems engineering. 1978. Fragments of white coral found near several Moai, at first dismissed as debris. Then archaeologist Sergio Rapu realized what they were. Eyes, carved to fit precisely into the statue's eye sockets. Each one made from white coral with pupils of obsidian or red volcanic stone. When installed and hit by sunlight, the statues appeared alive, watching. The eyes weren't added. At the quarry, they were the final step, after transport, after positioning, the ritual that activated the Moai. And not every statue got eyes. only the most important ones, which means there was a hierarchy, a selection process, criteria we don't fully understand. But here's what matters. Creating those eyes required coral, which doesn't grow. On Easter Island, it had to be imported from islands hundreds of miles away, which means they had ongoing trade. Eye networks, ocean-going vessels, navigation systems. The isolation was geographic, not cultural. 1864. A missionary named Eugene Arod discovers wooden tablets, covered in strange glyphs. Rongorongo, the only indigenous writing system in all of Oceania, rows of tiny figures. Humans, birds, plants, abstract symbols carved with shark teeth and obsidian blades, written in boustrophodon alternating line directions, a technique that appears in ancient Greek and Etruscan texts, but nowhere else in the Pacific. The tablets are made from wood species no longer present on the island, meaning they're old, very old. And despite decades of attempts, no one has fully translated them. Some researchers think they record genealogies or chants. Others believe they're astronomical data or historical records. A few suggest they're mnemonic devices for oral traditions, not phonetic language. But here's the suspicious part. Most of the tablets were destroyed or lost shortly after. European contact. Almost like someone didn't want them read. Today, only 25 survive, scattered across museums. Fragmentary. Enough to know they contain information. Not enough to decode what. Around 1400 AD, everything changed. Moai production stopped, the quarry went silent, and worship shifted to something new. The Birdman cult, centered at Orongo, a ceremonial village on the rim of a volcanic crater overlooking the ocean. The ritual was brutal. Each year, men from rival clans would swim through shark-infested waters to a nearby islet, racing to retrieve the first egg of a sacred seabird. The winner's sponsor became the Birdman, ruler of the island for a year. This wasn't just religion, it was a governance. Reset. Power no longer inherited, earned through risk. The shift suggests crisis, resource scarcity, social restructuring. But the Moai didn't disappear. They were toppled, deliberately, faces smashed, necks broken. Some researchers call it civil war. Others see it as controlled demolition of an old system. Either way, it marks the end of one knowledge transmission and the beginning of another. For decades, Easter Island was taught as a warning, a society that destroyed itself through environmental mismanagement, cut down all the trees, exhausted the soil, descended into warfare and cannibalism. But recent DNA analysis and excavations tell a different story. The population remained stable for centuries. There's no evidence of mass warfare or chaos. Instead, they adapted, developed rock gardens to protect crops from wind, built chicken coops to manage protein sources, maintained social order long after the supposed collapse. The real devastation came later, after European contact. Smallpox, slave raids. By the 1800s, the Population dropped from thousands to around 100. Survivors. In one generation, the language, the carving, knowledge, the navigation techniques all vanished. Not because the culture failed, because it was systematically destroyed. Modern ground-penetrating radar and 3D scanning are revealing new structures beneath the island. Additional chambers, tunnel networks, alignments we haven't mapped yet. Every new survey finds something that doesn't fit. The mystery isn't whether they could move the statues. We've proven that. The mystery is why a small, isolated population invested everything into building a monument system this complex. What were they encoding? What were they trying to preserve? The Moai aren't just statues. They're a message in stone, engineered to outlast. Language, politics, and catastrophe. And if you approach them as information storage rather than religious art, the whole island starts to look different. Like a vault, still sealed, still waiting for someone to ask the right